Let's take a look at how to create a histogram in Google Sheets. I will tell you right off the bat that it is a decent program for histograms, but certainly this is an area where Excel is a step up. We're going to work with the same data set that we did with Desmos, with calories burned. Just as a quick review, I'm going to put in equals max to get the maximum calorie burn for the whole 2-month period, the min, and I just put in min and then highlight column B, and then range is going to equal the max minus the min. I'm going to say how many observations did I have in total, and just press column B. And then there's the number of bins that you should have as the square root. That's just a total starting point. So what we're going to do is we're going to round whatever value we come up with, round up, round down, square root of this value here. And it says, hey, you should have maybe 8 bins, somewhere around there is what you should be thinking. And if you had 8 bins with a total range of values of 1320, then the range divided by the number of bins would suggest that your bin widths be 165. Now, what I want to show you is what happens if I go in here and just try to do this in Google Sheets. I am going to highlight all of the data. Notice I'm not highlighting like a frequency table or anything like that. That's going to become important. I'm highlighting the data itself. So I go in, I insert the chart, and it defaults to line chart, no big deal. I'm going to head down. Notice I'm going to pass the column charts. Keep heading down because there is sort of this theoretical difference between a column chart and a histogram. Notice how kind of nasty these chosen default x-axis values are. Like, these are really not nice. And we can change that up. We can customize. We're going to go down to horizontal axis. We know our highest value is 1320 and our lowest value is 0, and we have a suggested bin width of 165. So with that being the case, why don't we do a little bit of massaging, a little bit of rounding, and maybe we're going to set a minimum of 0, which is what we have currently, but we're going to set the maximum, at least for now, to 1500. And as soon as we did that, things started to get a little better, right? Like, we have 0 to 250, 250 to 500, 500 to 750. And this is starting to, take shape a bit nicer. Well, how many instances did I just not burn any calories? Looks like pretty close to 25. Now there's this histogram series. If we go to customize, which we've never seen before, if I want, I can create these item dividers to sort of create increments. Some people like that, some people don't. But we have bucket size. And remember, our recommended bucket size was 165. But if we're dividing up a min of 0 to 1500, then why don't we try out 150? Why don't we just see how 150 treats us as a bucket size? And that looks pretty good. We get a clear sense, hey, this is the 0 to 150, 150 to 300, so on and so forth. And these are, in a sense, this is important, these are categories, right? Like, this is in the category you burned between 0 and up to, but not including, 150 calories. This is the category you burned between 450 and up to, but not including, 600. So that's the way that we want to think about these, and that will kind of translate to where we happen to be going next with all of this. Great. You can toggle around, you can play and see what you want to do. There's no harm, no foul in going back and saying, well, maybe I want this to max out at 1400, not 1500. That's no big deal. Let's do it. Let's just go back down to horizontal axis and change it to 1400. Great. Maybe that's what you want. Anyhow, one problem as I see it, well, 2 problems. First of all, there is no way in Google Sheets that I'm aware of, at least not currently, where instead of having the frequency, you can have the relative frequency. And relative frequency is often more valuable. It's more insightful. And the other problem is that especially when we're dealing with discrete data sets and we're counting off like 1, 2, 3, 4, that type of thing, you can't get the number right below. There's this theoretical, like, from 0 and up to, but not 100. Well, sometimes that works just fine and sometimes not so well. So I want to show you a different way to go about doing some of this that addresses some of the core issues. Let's go back to our restaurant sales. How many nights in a given week did we meet our sales goals? And notice a frequency table by a very nature is a summation or a summary of the data. It's not the data itself. Down here, I've got the actual data, and I'm not going to be creating a histogram out of the data, but a summary of the data. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight all of the possible values. I'm going to press Control or Command, and then I'm going to highlight relative frequency. And then just to kind of have some fun, I'm going to do cumulative relative frequency. And we are going to go and insert a chart. It defaults to column chart. Now, column chart, if I didn't have this third column, the cumulative relative frequency column, that would work just fine. We are going to want to go to a combo chart. And we'll play around, we'll have some fun. There's an issue. We now have relative frequencies instead of raw counts. That's quite nice because we highlighted not the frequency column, but the relative frequency column. That's what the blue is doing for us. We can dress this up, we can clean it up in a couple different ways. Let's head over to Customize. And when we go to Series, there's this Apply to All series. And with the cumulative relative frequency, I'm going to drop down to that. And when I head to Axis, I'm going to click on Right Axis. And look what happens now. Now we have a beautiful chart that shows right under the discrete values, like 0 nights where you met your benchmark, 1 night where you met your benchmark, 2 nights where you met your benchmark, so on and so forth. And instead of reporting frequencies, it reports relative frequencies. And then finally, we have what's called an ogive. And an ogive is a linear representation of the cumulative relative frequency. And it starts off at 0, and then it heads up and concludes up at 100%. So we get a sense not just of the relative frequency, but the cumulative relative frequency all on one graph. We have the relative frequency on the left axis, and we have the cumulative relative frequency on the right axis.